All right, it looks like we've got close to a quorum here, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us for the Strongpoint Partners Secure 2.0, Securing a Stronger Retirement webinar. Our goal for today is really just to introduce everybody to the regulation that was recently passed, which is going by the vernacular Secure 2.0. This is an extension to previously passed regulations that updates and adds to and expands upon a bunch of the amendments that were included in the Secure 1.0 retirement planning. This gives new guidance to administrators, new plan options for all sorts of plan sponsors. And we wanted to really take this opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing as an organization to help ease the burden of preparing for Secure 2 on all of the marketplace. So I want to kick this off by welcoming our customers, our partners, and our employees, all of whom are joining us today from all across the United States. Thank you a ton to everyone for being here. It's really a great opportunity for us to provide some insight into how we're viewing these changes and what we're doing to help prepare both our current customers as well as our partners and all of our employees to make sure that we are Secure 2 ready as we move forward this year and dive into what this is going to mean, not just this year, but with new regulations that come into effect 1/1 this year all the way through 2027. It's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of advanced perspective here to be ready for this. We'll try to do these as often as is required to make sure that everyone has what they need to feel like they are being properly supported through these changes. I wanted to kick off with something a little unique. A lot of those people here on the webinar probably are not fully familiar with Strongpoint Partners. I think all of you know at least one of Jocelyn Pension Consulting, Howard Simon, or RSG, but probably not as well familiar with who Strongpoint Partners is. So I just wanted to do a brief introduction on Strongpoint before we dive in here. Strongpoint is a platform organization that is fully managing, owning, and operating Jocelyn, Howard Simon, and RSG, but really with a unique focus on building out a tools and system infrastructure to help support those business. Things like this webinar, the kind of things that we want to do by really tapping into the expertise that exists within these businesses. It's allow us to rebuild a lot of our processes, to invest in some tool infrastructure to improve administration, improve our record keeping options, improve integrations with different systems, which we'll touch on throughout this webinar and how that is aiding our administration process and our retirement servicing as a whole. It also allows us to look at product development, marketing, and education, and really building an ecosystem of support for a huge, broad swath of administrators, plan designers, and plan consultants across our brands. What definitely isn't changing in any way is the companies that you know and love. All of our consultation, customer service, delivery, and execution, all of the people that really make this business what it is, will still continue to be there to serve their customers in the marketplace every day. Jocelyn, Howard Simon, RSG are amazing businesses and have built incredible brands. Our job at Strongpoint is simply to find a way to enhance what they do and give them greater ability to share and learn from each other, as things like Secure 2 have given us a chance to do, to come together here. By way of reference for Strongpoint Partners, my name is Michael Heflin. I'm the head of sales and marketing for Strongpoint Partners and helping to bring together the knowledge all across this organization to represent the amazing businesses that you see before you. So with that, I wanted to jump into what our agenda and goals look like for the day. As our way of walking through what's actually included in Secure 2, we really wanted to focus on a couple of different aspects. The first of those is the tools and considerations that we're building and that Secure 2 enhances for new plan sponsors. The second of those is how we're supporting our existing customers through the risks and opportunities of Secure 2. With all of these changes coming down, this presents unique opportunities, but it also carries risks in how plans need to be managed going forward and how that changes what administration services have to look like to make sure that everyone continues to get the most value out of their retirement strategy. And then finally, we're going to talk about how interconnected systems are improving compliance, accuracy, and tax benefits. A lot of the changes that take place over the next couple of years depend on very good data exchange between different HR systems and your retirement administration service, whether that's auto escalation or auto increases, whether it's making sure you're taking advantage of tax advantages based on employee contributions. All of those things are tweaked in some way through Secure 2. And so we'd like to talk about what we're doing to best prepare for that and make sure that as we drive our product strategy forward that supports all of our business leaders, we're keeping in mind how Secure 2 will impact that over the future. With that as our agenda, I wanted to go ahead and get started. Our first presenter is Nick Jocelyn, a principal at Jocelyn Pension Consulting. As you hopefully saw on the first screen, Jocelyn Pension is based in Boulder, Colorado, with an office in San Francisco and clients spread all across the western half of the United States. Nick has been with Jocelyn for years. He's an amazing plan design consultant and is really excited to tell you about what we're doing to help new entrants come into the retirement space. With that, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks a ton, Nick.
Thanks, Mike. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nick Jocelyn. It's nice to be here today. Like Mike said, I'll be talking a little bit about some of the key provisions in Secure 2.0 that are helping small businesses set up new 401k plans. So the first big one is tax credits. One of the biggest benefits for employers with 50 or fewer employees is an increased tax credit for starting a new 401k plan. The tax credit covers 100% of plan admin costs up to $5,000 for starting a new plan. Previously, this credit was just for up to 50% of plan admin costs. There's also an additional 100% credit of up to $1,000 per employee for employer contributions made for employees who earn less than $100,000 a year. This credit then decreases 25% in each of the following 3 years. Larger employers with 51 to 100 employees can qualify for a similar but lesser credit for employer contributions. Next, starter plans. Secure 2.0 also makes it possible to establish a more simplified 401k 403b solution, which is called a starter 401k or 403b plan. These starter plans simplify plan administration by deeming the discrimination tests are already satisfied. Salary deferrals in these plans are limited to a maximum of $6,000 plus catch-up contributions, so quite a bit less than your typical 401k plan. And in these plans, automatic enrollment is required for all employees. This next one, incentives to participate. Prior to Secure 2.0, an employer could not incentivize an employee to contribute to a 401k plan. We actually had a client a few years ago who, during an employee education meeting, said he would give $20 cash to any employee who enrolled in the 401k plan before the end of the day. And then sadly, we had to inform him that if he did that, he could possibly face plan disqualification. But the good news is moving forward, he can do that. And the intent here is to provide what's called de minimis financial incentives to encourage participation. The intent is, gift cards about $25 or less. We haven't actually received guidance on what de minimis means, but I think if you're giving $25 gift cards to employees to incentivize them, you're probably just fine. So it's kind of a nice little feature you can do moving forward. So on the next slide here, we're going to talk about some of the provisions that will go into effect in 2024. The first one is the easing of the top-heavy plan rules. Many small employers do not adopt plans due to the potential of required top-heavy minimum contributions. So to increase participation in these plans, Secure 2.0 is modify the top-heavy rules to allow excludable and not excludable employees to be tested separately, as we currently do for the 401k non-discrimination tests. This change is great because it now encourages employers to offer plans to younger employees. And again, this goes into effect for plan years ending in 2023. So we can start doing these tests starting next year. And this other thing, which I'm really excited about, is we talk to participants or potential clients all the time who want to switch from a simple to a 401k plan. But in the past, if you wanted to do that, you had to wait until the end of the calendar year to terminate that simple and then start a new 401k plan. You couldn't have a 401k and a simple in the same plan year. But now, starting in 2024, employers with simple plans can now terminate the simple at any time during the plan year, provided that they establish a new safe harbor plan that is in effect for the rest of the year. So we just had a potential client call us a couple weeks ago saying he wanted to switch his simple to a 401k plan. Sadly, he has to still wait till the end of this calendar year, but next year, anyone who has a simple can switch at any time during the year if they, provided they switch to a safe harbor plan. And with that, I'll hand it back off to Mike.
Thanks, Nick. That was great. I really appreciate the updates. I think we're all very excited about how some of these changes will impact things going forward. The easing of top-heavy plan rules is a great one and really helps bring forward some of the expertise our team and the knowledgeable experts can bring to bear on how you should structure your plan in order to take advantage of some of these changes. I also wanted to mention in Nick's first point around the tax benefits available to new plan sponsors. We do have a full tax benefit calculator available for our team. So if at any point you want to set up a review to look at if you've started a plan in the last year or two, if you're going to be starting a plan in the next year or two, and want to look at what those tax credit options look like, we can run scenarios for you to look at different contribution levels, different match levels, and what that would actually calculate out to from a tax benefit. So please take advantage of that anytime as you're looking at what sort of comes next. With that, Nick, thank you again. I wanted to next move on to Todd Baker. Todd is one of the principals at RSG based down in New Orleans. Todd has an amazing amount of experience having come up through the organization and worked in a number of different areas, now overseeing some of the plan design, consultation, and implementation space, and really understands administration backwards and forwards and what it takes to serve a client. We couldn't have a better person to be leading this process for how we're converting our systems, rebuilding some of our workflows to make sure we're prepared for the administrative changes that are coming with Secure 2.0. With that, I'll turn it over to Todd to walk us through some of the updates to plan administration and what we're doing to support our current client base through these changes.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Again, for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Todd Barker from Retirement Strategies Group here in New Orleans. And I'm going to go talk to us about some of the mandatory changes coming our way, along with some of the optional provisions that we may want to utilize. So first one is increased benefit for participants closer to retirement, right? So higher catch-up limit at ages 60 to 63. So this is an interesting provision where plans will be able to allow participants during the ages of 60 to 63 to kind of make a special catch-up contribution up to the greater of the following two amounts. So you can do it up to 10,000 or 150% of the 2024 catch-up contribution limit that is available for other participants. All right, so both of these amounts are going to be indexed after 2025. This is an optional provision for tax years beginning after December 31st, 2024. So we have some time before this goes into effect to decide if this is something that we want to allow in the plan. One thing to remember, though, too, is after age 63, the participant goes back to the normal catch-up limit. So that's an interesting thing, but there's definitely some quirks in there that we got to figure out how we can track that and make sure we get that buttoned up. Another one I think is interesting is increased age for RMDs, right? So if you remember, Secure 1 actually moved the age from 70.5 to 72. So they're doing it again. So now RMD age is increasing from 72 to 73 for participants who turn 72 after December 31st, 2022. So looking ahead, they've also already said that anyone who reaching age 74 after 12/31/2032, their start date is 75. So we can see the trend here that this is going to be a moving target going forward. And this one is actually mandatory. Kind of staying with RMDs and moving into the next section on the expansion of Roth, Secure 2.0, Roth accounts are now going to be excluded from pre-death RMD rules. So Roth accounts, when determining pre-death RMDs for participants, are excluded. This aligns the rules for Roth accounts with the Roth IRA RMD rule. This is mandatory, effective for taxable years beginning after December 31st, 2023. Another part that's going to happen in the Roth expansion is catch-up contributions must be Roth for high earners. The catch-up contributions under 401k, 403b, and 457 plans may only be made on a Roth basis for participants whose prior year compensation exceeded 145,000. So all employees, though, even if they don't reach that 145 in the prior year, if they want to elect for their catch-up contributions to be Roth, you also have to permit that. So that's a pretty big change that's going to happen for high earners coming up. This is a mandatory provision for tax years beginning after December 31st, 2023. This wage limit will be indexed for inflation. So it's 145 now, but I could see that that's going to be moving up as well. Plans that do not currently offer Roth contributions, so this is kind of a big thing. If you currently have in your plan where it's only pre-tax deferrals and you don't have Roth contributions, that's going to be something that's going to need to be added to your plan to account for this change. Next provision is the option for Roth employer match and non-elected contributions. So 401k, 403b, and governmental 457 plans can let participants elect to receive vested match and non-elective contributions on a Roth basis. These contributions aren't excludable from the participant's gross income. Very key to remember on this, this is an optional provision, starting with contributions made after December 29th, 2022. So this isn't something that's going to be mandatory, but it's going to be something that could be looked at. I will state, there's a lot that we've sat in on and studied on this and listened to things coming out of Washington. Guidance is definitely needed on implementation issues of this, how these contributions will be treated for purposes of payroll withholding and income tax reporting. Those are still things that we're waiting for guidance on, but that is an option that's going to be available. Going to the next slide. So now I'm going to talk about a couple of things I think it's interesting, going to be pretty helpful for plan sponsors and people who are in charge of operating plan and plan administration in general. Employee certification for hardship distribution. So plan administrators of 401k and 403b plans can choose to rely on a participant's self-certification of a hardship withdrawal, as long as it's for one of the 7 safe harbor reasons. And if you're not familiar with that, that could be for burial expenses for the employee or a dependent or educational expenses as well. The participant you have to make sure the participant has no alternative means reasonably available to them to satisfy the need. This is an optional provision. So if you're a plan sponsor that's comfortable with your current process and you want to keep with that, you can. But I know that there are some plan sponsors that have struggled with this part when people are taking hardship withdrawals and making sure that they've got the proper documentation. Beginning after December 29, 2022, that's actually an option now for you, that you can use the employee certification for that. So that could definitely be helpful. Another thing coming up is force outs. That can usually be pretty hard for employers to keep up with, and usually people like to get them, see if they can't help force out some of those small balances. So they've increased the dollar limit for mandatory distributions. The maximum amount that may be involuntary cashed out has increased to $7,000 from the current $5,000. This is optional for distributions after December 31, 2023. I say it's optional because if you want to leave it the way it is, you can. You don't have to increase it. This is obviously going to be something that's subject to the plan document. This will probably be included with the plan amendment coming up with Secure 2.0 later on. But that's another thing that could probably help kind of get rid of some of the small balances that are right over that 5,000 plan balance limit. The next thing I think is potentially pretty huge for a lot of companies. Determining if you're the Form 5500, if you're a large or small plan filer. Currently, generally, if there are 100 or more eligible participants at the beginning of the plan year, the plan requires a CPA audit, which we all know can be pretty costly. This change now, the participant count will be determined based only on the number of participants with actual account balances as of the beginning of the plan year. That's potentially huge. We know we've all got some plans that have lower participation, but have a high count of eligible employees, but they've been subject to this plan audit. The time, effort, cost that goes in with that can kind of be backbreaking at times. So those clients may find themselves at a spot to where they don't have to have that anymore. That's starting with the 2023 plan year. And then the last section, I'm going to talk about a couple things they've allowed that I think is interesting, some retroactive opportunities. You can now do retroactive amendments to increase benefits. So under current law, generally, any discretionary amendment to retirement plan must be adopted before the plan year ends. Now employers have until the tax return deadline, including their extension, to adopt the amendment. One key thing is that this must result in an increased benefit. And this is optional for plan years beginning after December 31st, 2023. So unfortunately, if you're sitting here today and you find yourself in that category where you wish you would have made a change, you can't do that now for 2022, but you will be able to do that coming up next year and in the future. And then the last one I want to talk about is the retroactive elective deferrals for solo Ks. So Secure 2.0 kind of fixed the glitch that made it difficult for a new solo K to be opened up retroactively for a prior year. So Secure 1 allowed for a plan to be put in place, but the first year could only include employer contributions. As you know, a lot of times this creates problems for solo proprietors because they're often, not aware of what their business earnings are going to be for the year until after the close of the year. Also, employer contributions have a maximum of 20% of adjusted net earnings or 25% of compensation if the business is incorporated. Adding the ability to make deferrals certainly helps them get closer to the overall plan limit during that first year, being able to put in deferrals to go along with that 20 or 25% of compensation. That's effective for 2023 year plans. So that's going to be somebody who misses the opportunity this year and in 2024 wants to go back and put that plan in place. And I thank everyone for your time.
Todd, thank you a ton for the updates. That was fantastic, and love all the steps we're taking here to help cover our existing plans as we move forward and ensure that administration stays in lockstep with these upcoming changes. The next thing I wanted to cover, as we discussed in the beginning, is how we're looking at integrated systems to help improve accuracy and compliance and ensure we can maintain some of the regulatory steps that need to be taken as we move forward with Secure 2. To do that, I'd like to introduce you to Patrick Pasqualicchio, who's going to lead us through what we're doing from an integrated systems perspective to help make sure we're getting the data we need to make administration as seamless as possible. Patrick has been with Howard Simon for almost 2 decades in Chicago, working in plan administration and helping with plan design. Today, he leads up our plan consultation practice for Howard Simon, leading a team that will help you design anything you need and help work through implementation and getting your TPA set up live in conjunction with whomever you're using on the record keeping or partnership side. To that, I'd like to turn it over to Patrick to share a bit more. Patrick, I think we lost your audio. Yeah, you're super quiet. Sorry, everybody. We'll get Patrick set back up. We were trading headphones here to make sure we could hear him. While Patrick gets reconfigured, we'll very quickly touch on some of the system diagrams you see here outlined in front of you. What we're really trying to illustrate with a lot of these changes coming is the value of having solid data transfer between programs. And one of the things that Strongpoint has been hyper-focused on is not only enhancing our own payroll and HXM systems to ensure that they speak seamlessly together with our TPA practices, but also making sure that we broaden our network and our partnership structure to stay aligned with as much of the industry as possible. We pride ourselves on working across a number of different HR systems, a number of different payroll systems, and working with all of our record-keeping partners to make sure that we maintain as accurate and compliant data transfer process as possible. This ensures that as things continue to evolve, as the administration space becomes more complicated due to all these changing regulations, We make sure that we've got the data and systems we need to do that while placing as little burden as possible on our actual customers. It's never going to be as simple as we'd like it to be. In fact, if we know how regulation works, it will probably continue to get more complicated. But part of Strongpoint's objectives is to make sure that all of our businesses has the system integration and system structure they need to be able to respond accordingly as these changes come down the line. Patrick's going to tell us about some of what those changes are and specifically how they're going to impact our ability to administer and the data that will be required going forward. Patrick, we have you back?
Am I here now? Can you hear me?
Perfect, buddy. Perfect.
All
Take
right.
it away.
Apologize for that. I tried to switch off this headset, but
No
obviously it
problem at
didn't work too well. Yeah, not only with regulations, but as simply as, you know, we understand technology. Case in point, having to switch from my headphones to my headset in order to make it work, right? It seems like it would be as simple as a push of a button, but sometimes even getting systems to talk to each other and interact with each other isn't always the easiest thing to do. But like I said, when I was trying to kick this off, I'm just going to spend the next few minutes discussing the importance of really having an integrated payroll plan administration, possibly even record keeping system. So I'm going to talk less about the regulations and more kind of broadly based connectivity between service providers that you potentially are working with either now or could be working with in the future. And so the first point, you know, as you're thinking about Secure 2.0 and how it affects your clients or your existing plan, over the next few years, you know, we've talked about a lot of provisions here. You're going to see an increased burden to enact some of these provisions as they become effective. Luckily, they didn't roll it all out on us right away and make sure that we're doing this all immediately. But then also you have some of the consideration to add the optional provisions as participants and ownership. Just begin to understand the implications of what the changes are going to mean to them individually or to them as a business owner. So that's kind of one group that you're thinking about. The other group, another part of Secure 2.0 is it's also encouraging employers that don't have a plan to potentially start a plan. And this could be difficult on your organization. It could be difficult for your clients without the assistance from really competent service providers. And it's really difficult because, you know, having an integrated payroll and administration process, it's going to save you time. Having that integrated system will not only help you start the plan, but more importantly, it's going to help you with the ongoing operation of the plan itself. And the integration really does go beyond like internally our clients that just use Howard Simon for both payroll and 401k, because we also offer connectivity and can have connectivity with outside platforms and potentially even some of our partners at Jocelyn and RSG. So not only is it just Howard Simon clients, but potentially some of the other partners we're dealing with today and some of the national platforms that are out there as well. So kind of in our mind, we really firmly believe that our integrated solutions are going to be able to assist you, your clients, and your companies with the implementation, the compliance, the maximization of the benefits that are all coming out of Secure 2.0. And so you can see on the slide, there's a couple things that we've already touched upon today that I'll kind of kick off that we feel are some of the key highlights where the integrated system is going to help out with either you and or your company and really provide the importance to have that seamless connection without having to go to multiple service providers and try to get answers from different companies and then connect them down the line at some point in time. So one of the things Nick talked about was that expanded auto enrollment, auto escalation. And obviously that's not starting now, but it will be in effect for plans who started after, or companies who started their plans after 12/29 of 2022. And then you've got to implement that by 2025. And again, you know, it's not something that you need to do today, but when it comes time for this and the provision kicks in, having payroll and retirement providers on the same page is going to be really important in order for you to capture those employees, get those deductions started, and then as the years progress, get that automatic increase kicked in as well. And so the better data connection you have, the more the systems, the providers are talking to each other, the better off this is obviously going to be. I don't think we touched too much on this one, but there's also a change to that long-term part-time service worker or part-time employee that's coming down the road. One of the things Secure Act did was again, add these employees to be eligible to participate in the plan. Secure 2.0 reduces the amount of time they need to work by 1 year. So going from 3 years to 2 years. And we feel like this is another provision that really needs that coordination of benefits and services between payroll and retirement to make sure that these employees are brought into the plan correctly when they become eligible, and also that their service, their vesting, and their deferrals are all being properly accounted for. And again, thinking about the provision itself, it's not like they're going to need that employer contribution, but they are going to need the ability to participate on them for themselves. One of the things Todd just touched on is some of the things with Roth. So you've got the Roth catch-up requirement starting next year. You've got the Roth increased catch-up limits starting in 2025. And presumably it's going to be easy for a payroll provider just to program this into their system and make sure when employee X, who's 50 or older, gets above a certain limit, that those deferrals are be converted to Roth. But we feel like the more complete and accurate the data flow is, the better off that they are talking between each other, that the two providers can ensure that the catch-up dollars are applied correctly, and also that those annual limits are accounted for down the road. Emergency savings accounts, emergency savings withdrawals are two additional things that I think potentially could really benefit from having that integrated service provider. And as more information becomes kind of aware and develops around those two things, we'll have some more information coming to you on how to apply those. But I think one of the other big things that Nick talked about, and it's a little bit of something we've been doing here internally with our clients in Illinois, is this deferral only starter 401k idea. We've called it at Howard Simon 401k Lite. And the idea here is to make it as easy as smooth to get the plan off the ground and just make sure that clients and employers can comply with either the state mandates like we have here in Illinois with, or potentially Colorado has one, California has one. I know that other states are thinking about these as well. So having that deferral only starter 401k available when it comes time that you need to comply with your state mandates, or if you're an employer that doesn't offer a plan now, to simply capture the benefits of Secure 2.0, right? Thinking about things that we talked about, like the tax credits and the ability for owners and key employees to participate in a plan where they may not have done so in the past. Just being able to offer a deferral only plan and not having it fail all these tests that we always talk about all the time, to take advantage of this it's going to be huge for companies that don't have a plan right now. So I think the more, again, the more data that you can have flowing between providers and the more connectivity that they have, the better off that you're going to see your plan operate, whether it comes down to either implementing some of the Secure 2.0 changes and provisions that are there for those of you who have existing plans or that have clients with plans, and also for those of you who are on the phone that need to start a plan. It's definitely going to be helpful. I'll kick it back over to you, Mike. Thanks.
Patrick, thank you a ton. That was fantastic. And I do appreciate our well-staged strategy there of having headphones that don't work so we can illustrate the benefit of good technology. Everybody, I'd like to thank you a ton. That completes the formal presentation portion of our agenda. I really appreciate everyone jumping on here. We do have a few questions, so we'll make sure that we try to address as many of these as possible. And if you do have any questions now, please feel free to jump in and include those in the Q&A section. We'll do our best to answer whatever we can. The first question is a great one. Can you get a copy of the recording? Of course, we will absolutely make the copy of this recording available to everybody. We're recording this to the web, so we'll be able to share just a location that you should be able to watch or download and listen to any of or all of today's webinar. So we'll make sure that gets shared with everyone, and that will be a live link. So if there's others in your organization, partners you work with, et cetera, that you'd like to share this with, feel free. All they have to do is register, and they will be able to listen to and attend the recording. Okay. I got another question about the slide deck itself. We certainly can share the slide deck. Our plan had been to share the webinar itself, but we'll work on how we can separate this and get it shared with those attendees. That should be totally fine. So I'll figure out a way to decouple the two and make sure that the slide deck can get shared as well for those who are interested in the content. We will also be sending out a set of links. Any of you who follow Strongpoint on LinkedIn may have seen that we posted earlier a new web timeline that we recently created. It's a timeline structure that highlights all of the critical changes coming with Secure 2, when they go into effect, whether they're required or optional, and links directly to the formal gov text if you want to read, sort of more in-depth analysis of the actual amendments. We did include that. We'll be sharing that link with everyone as well. So you'll have access to the timeline website. It'll also be accessible from Howard Simon RSG and Jocelyn websites. Hopefully a great resource for anyone who just needs a quick guide. It's got instructions on how to navigate, et cetera. If you are looking at, what's coming when and how it will be required. We, of course, are always here to answer questions, but wanted to give you a good on-the-go tool you can always fall back on as well. Okay, next question. I got a question regarding if there's advantages to using the Howard Simon / Strongpoint integration services in regards to implementing these provisions, or is the benefit mainly to take work off of the plan sponsor and to ensure accurate data to keep the plan in compliance? I think that the answer to those is probably a little bit of both. So there's certainly benefit in using a great plan design specialist, which every one of our business has amazing plan consultants. It is why we are so proud of the business we're building here at Strongpoint. They will help walk you through what you need to do to maximize all of the tax benefits for both you and your employees, as well as long-term saving objectives, whether that's directly related to Secure 2 or otherwise. Certainly one of the major objectives of the system integration piece that Patrick talked to is about reducing the workload on the plan sponsor themselves. The more integrated the data systems are, the more communicative that structure, the easier it is to facilitate without a lot of back and forth and manual checks for required data, right? Whether new employees are joining the organization and therefore we need to do training or auto enroll communication. All of that stuff is made easier if that data flows seamlessly. So I think that there is certainly a benefit to making sure that the plan is set up as accurately as possible. If you do use our payroll and HR services, that's great. Those systems are automatically integrated. If you have any other payroll provider or HR system, the key is just making sure that we've got good systems and process in place to communicate, whether that is manually or as we desire or as automated as possible, to take as much of that burden off of the plan sponsor operating company as possible, so that we can give you the best service possible. I did get another question about website data, ironically. Sorry, I just looked at this. So that's great. As I shared, we do have a timeline website available that has all of the detail you could need. It's posted on our Strongpoint LinkedIn right now. It will also be accessible from each of the company's websites, and we will send out a link to all of the registrants following this webinar. I did get another question. Are there any benefits to increase the force out dollar amount to the plan? We have officially reached beyond my knowledge and capacity here. I see Patrick smiling, so we'll let Todd, you go ahead and jump in, buddy.
Yeah, I can just, so it could be, obviously, if you force out and, sometimes missing participants can be problems for sponsors. Sometimes you're paying fees for them. You're still having to handle the notice requirements. So a lot of plan sponsors look to clear out, missing, old participants with small balances. You may have had people that might have been right over that $5,000 threshold that is under $7,000. So now it could be beneficial to be able to get more people out of the plan at that time. Yeah.
Hey, awesome. Thank you a ton, Todd. We got another question around for the catch-up contribution for those earnings above the income threshold. Is this total gross income that's used for the calculation?
I believe so.
Okay. When we were reading through the regulations, it did look like it was total gross income that's used to determine that income threshold. And so in some cases, if there's across multiple companies, et cetera, we may need to look at what that looks like, but those contributions are generally specific to the individual's overall gross income, not any specific income source.
Yeah, and I will say this too. Again, this came up a few times. There's still guidance needed for partners or sole proprietors that don't receive wages. So again, as with a lot of these things, we're still looking for guidance, but that's definitely, you could find yourself in an area there where we're still looking for them to kind of give us some guidance on how to proceed on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great caveat to all this, Todd, and we've talked about this a few different times. With how new all these regulations are, we're doing everything we can to get out in front of them. Some of them still require significant further definition in terms of how to actually operationalize what these changes mean. So part of our objective in building out the web timeline is it gives us a checkpoint as well for when to come back and see how these things are actually being clarified in the annual tax guidance. And that's our job, to make sure we stay on top of that, leverage our systems to make sure that that's knowledge that's getting out to all our administrators as we continue to see enhanced sort of guidance around each of these things, and real tax guidance, which primarily will be coming obviously the end of this year. There was a question on if there's Secure 2 document amendment coming and if it's going to result in a fee for plans similar to the Cycle 3 restatement fee. Today, no, there's no yet guidance around a formal Secure 2 document amendment being required. Instead, it's sort of a collection of changes that we are planning for and making sure we're ready for administratively. Todd, you looked like you had something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, there's going to be amendments that come along with this. The smile was, depending on, not everybody, the Cycle 3 restatement is its own kind of animal compared to this. I would assume that, amendments would be handled like other amendments for the plan, but it's kind of too early to figure out what we're going to have, when we're going to have, what's the timeline on it. I think I read somewhere around 2025 was when they were thinking that this would have to be amended by. So there's more to come on that, but I will say that it would not be the same, at least speaking from RSG's standpoint. I remember it would not be the same as what we did with the Cycle 3 restatement fee. No.
We've actually had a couple meetings, Todd, with some of our clients the last week or two, and this question has come up. And again, that's kind of our answer, is that the amendment needs to be done by the end of 2025. But with respect to operating your plan with some of these seemingly optional provisions, you can actually operate your plan under the assumption that you're just going to do the amendment by the time that it's due. So you need to enact the amendment by 12/31/2025. But if you want to start using some of these provisions, let's say next year, the beginning of 2025, you can definitely put it in place and run your plan.
It would be similar to, if you remember, the CARES amendment, right? They came out and gave CARES during COVID. You're able to quickly act on those, but then we had to, wrap up those amendments later on.
Yep.
Okay, perfect, gentlemen. Thank you a ton. That's a great answer, and I think exactly right. This is going to be something we work through with each of our customers. This is not, one generic, one solution fits all. It's going to be dependent on what you need to take advantage of and when, with the obvious guideline that the restatement doesn't need to be done over the next 3 years, 2.5, I guess, at this point. Okay, that does it for new questions. Thank you to everybody for attending. Thank you a ton for all the great questions. As mentioned previously, we will make sure a version of this recording gets shared with everybody. We appreciate the time. Thanks to everyone. Thank you especially to our panelists, Patrick, Todd, Nick. Amazing work. Thank you for all the prep putting this together. Thank you for everything you do for your customers and partners every day. It means the world. Thank you all, and have a great